Sabres are going to need a lot of luck when they play the Bruins in Boston on Thursday night. One of the best teams in the NHL is who they'll have to snap a 4-game losing streak against. We're previewing it next here on the Locked On Sabres podcast.
Your Locked On Sabres, your daily podcast on the Buffalo Sabres. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
And welcome into the Locked On Sabres podcast, and thanks for making us your first listen every day. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Today's episode is presented by Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, use the code LOCKEDONNHL. You're going to get $20 off your first purchase. So we got a game to preview against the Boston Bruins, in which it features the first ever debut. Not first ever debut, the first game of Eric Robinson's Buffalo Sabres career after the Sabres acquired him for a 7th-round pick, a conditional 7th-round pick. We found out the conditions that he has to play more than 45 games for that to be met. Kind of funny, right? How did that negotiation go? Were they arguing over games played by Eric Robinson for a conditional 7th? Kind of funny to think about. We'll talk best bets of Sabres and Bruins, what's going on with Boston, and my old takes exposed on them as someone that believed wholeheartedly that they were going to take a step back, and they enter into tonight's game tied for first place in the Eastern Conference. So, yeah, that's how it's going for my takes on the Bruins so far this year. But I'll explain why they're having a great season, despite no good centermen, at least coming into the year. No good centermen. Some guys that have stepped up for them. We'll go through the Sabres lineup as well. Remember, you can check us out, and you can get all your updates, and you can text with us. Join subtext.com/LockedOnSabres for our Sorties group chat. I'm sure all the Sorties are going to be not happy if the Sabres are getting blown out by the Bruins again tonight, and there's a pretty good chance that that could happen. Hopefully not, but we'll see what we get. They are 2-17-1. The Sabres are in their last 20 games against the Boston Bruins. 2-17-1. One of those wins, you'll remember, because there aren't many Bruins wins to remember, is last year, New Year's, where the Sabres won. Alex Tuch in overtime. Dylan Cousins ties the game on a Dahlin on purpose icing that he knew Tuch was going to get to. Cousins puts it in, one of the most thrilling victories of the season. So it's not like it's never happened, but it's definitely a rare occurrence that the Sabres find success, especially in Boston. Looking at the Sabres lineup for this game, again, as I mentioned, Eric Robinson is going to be making his Buffalo Sabres debut, and he will be doing it on a line with Peyton Krebs and Kyle Okposo. He is just being inputted into the spot that Zemgus Girgensons was meant to play. He also was taking Girgensons' minutes on the penalty kill at practice. So here's a quick thought I have about Robinson. Still hate the trade. I think it's dumb. I think it doesn't make any difference. The Sabres clearly think this is a free player that's going to help us on the penalty kill while Girgensons is going to be out. And maybe, just maybe, this could mean that Zemgus is going to be out a lot longer than we thought. We don't know, right? I talked to Don Granato on Tuesday. I asked him about injured players. When he got to Girgensons, he was willing to give timelines on everybody. Girgensons, though, he said, we hope to have an update next week. Maybe they got an update earlier than that. That, hey, this is not looking good. He might be out longer than you think. So you might want to go get a penalty killer because that's something that he does. And you might want to go get a 4th liner. And they did the Robinson move. Other lines for this game, everything else pretty much the same as last game. Casey Middlestat centering Tage Thompson and Jeff Skinner. Dylan Cousins centering J.J. Peterka and Zach Benson. Tyson Joe centering Isaac Rozan and Victor Olofsson. The blue line is a little bit in flux going into this game. Rasmus Dahlin was not on the ice for the morning skate, and he is a game-time decision, according to head coach Don Granato. Obviously would be a massive loss. He is the guy that shows up night to night more than anybody. So game-time decision. He was working off the ice, so I guess it is injury-related, but don't know. So if he doesn't play, then I just imagine Ryan Johnson goes right in, and that's an easy, one in, one out. If Dahlin does play, we don't really have a good idea of who the healthy scratch on the blue line would be because Johnson obviously was just taking Dahlin's part at practice. My opinion is that Connor Clifton should be the one who sits because he is the one that led up the dumbest breakaway I've ever seen a defenseman leave open against the Red Wings last game. He was just strolling to the side for no reason whatsoever, opened up a lane for Rasmussen, and they were able to score on the breakaway. So Clifton, to me, would be the one that you sit, not Ryan Johnson. Yoki Haru was working on the second power play unit, Power on the first, with Dahlin not at practice. We'll see. And then the big news in net is it is going to be Devon Levi in goal over Eric Comrie. Luukkonen still dealing with an illness. And to me, this is a big night for not even just Levi, but Eric Comrie. I've been talking about the stats about Comrie. 17 goals allowed on 97 shots since he returned from injury. He's been putrid. And he's not, to me, an NHL goaltender. There is 19 games in 8 seasons that says that he's an NHL goaltender. The rest of it says he's an AHL goaltender. And here's Devon Levi with, to me, a real opportunity to force a decision by the Sabres. Because if Levi looks good, and let's be real, Comrie had a nice preseason. Let's take the preseason pledge and let's not buy into it at all. So eliminate that. Since the beginning of the season, Comrie has had, realistically, one good game. And by the numbers, that's actually true. He's had one game above a 900 save percentage. And it was his first game of the year, night number 2 of the Buffalo Sabres season. Since then, hasn't had a good game. And Levi, while being very inconsistent himself, has at least had a few really good games, as opposed to just one. Levi was fantastic, I thought, against the Minnesota Wild a couple of weeks ago. Maybe arguably the best performance a Sabre goaltender's had all year. He was very strong in a win in Toronto, where, yes, he let 4 goals in, but we all watched that game. He played really well in that game. Also, a win earlier in the season against Tampa Bay, where he only allowed 2 on 25 shots, a pretty solid performance. He's had a few good games, at least, whereas Comrie, I think you can realistically say, has only had one. So, to me, if Levi plays well, if they beat the Boston Bruins with Devon Levi in net, I mean, I keep saying this. I almost feel like an idiot for keep saying it, but I'm going to say it again. Comrie should be waived tonight if they beat the Bruins and Levi plays well. There's no reason. I mean, he might not even get claimed. Again, if I'm another NHL team, I don't have any reason to believe this guy's an NHL goaltender. So, big night for Levi. Maybe a big night for Comrie, too. He might be done as the Sabres' backup goaltender to Luukkonen, or the number 2 to Luukkonen, however you want to label it, if Levi takes his job. And by the way, on development and does Levi get enough starts to develop? To me, there's enough starts. The Luukkonen has played well. Luukkonen's not playing 60 games, right? He's going to play more if he keeps playing like this, but he's not playing that many. He's going to play, 50, 55? And that leaves 35 to 40 left over for Devon Levi. To me, that is plenty for a young goaltender getting his feet wet in the National Hockey League and adjusting to an NHL schedule. So let's see what we get. When we come back, what's going on with the Boston Bruins? A lot of good things, I should say, are happening with the Boston Bruins. So we'll get to that when we come back here on the Locked On Sabres podcast. We are presented here on the show by Game Time. Game Time, you shouldn't have to worry about where you're buying your tickets to your next big event. Killer last-minute deals, all in prices. Views from your seat, which to me is the best feature because you know exactly what you're going to be looking at, your angle, how high up you are before you even get into the arena. And their best price guarantee. Game Time takes the guesswork out of buying tickets. Game Time has deals on tickets right up to the start of the event. And honestly, even an hour after it starts, it's the best place to find last-minute tickets. Find exclusive flash deals, sponsored deals on tickets for football, basketball, baseball, hockey, concerts, comedy, theater, everything you need. With zone deals, you pick the section. Game Time picks the seats for an average of 18% savings, and the Game Time guarantee means you'll always get the best price. If you find tickets in the same section and row for less, Game Time will credit you 110% of the difference. Take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, use the code LOCKEDONNHL. You're going to get $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account, redeem code LOCKEDONNHL for $20 off. Download Game Time today. Last-minute tickets, lowest price guaranteed. All right, what's going on with the Boston Bruins? I hate the Boston Bruins. I imagine I'm going to hate the Boston Bruins even more after this game on Thursday night. But to be fair, I've not really been hating the Bruins as much during the Sabres drought because we all watch the Sabres. And that might be tonight, right? If the Sabres are getting smoked by the Bruins, our hate for Boston will go by the wayside for our frustration with the home team or the Sabres in this instance. So the Bruins, they're right back to where they were. I feel like a dummy, feel like an idiot. I am never going to take them lightly again until, of course, I inevitably do and will be wrong again. This year, my synopsis, my theory on Boston was they take a step back because, one, they set the NHL record for points. They're at least going to take a step back, and that has happened, but they're still tied for first in the Eastern Conference. But my big point on the Bruins was this team has the worst center group in the NHL. And I don't care how good the rest of your team is. That's the most important position. And if you are bad at it, you're not going to be a great hockey team. Well, here they are. They're a great hockey team. And the centers are doing fine. Really, I guess I really should have considered the possibility, more naive of me, that because they have star wingers and a great defense pairing or blue line and a great system that gets the most out of its players, if everything around the center group is perfect, you're going to get more out of your centerman. And that's exactly what's happened. Charlie Coyle, who has never been more than a good third line center and an underwhelming second line center. This year, he has played 17 minutes and 26 seconds as the second line center, 20 points in 24 games, almost a point a game pace. He's probably going to end up around 60, 70 points. Pavel Zacha, who I made fun of as that's a number one center. That's one of the worst number one centers in hockey. Well, when you stick him with David Pastrnak and Brad Marchand, he's going to look a little bit better, right? 19 points in 24 games. He plays the most at 18 minutes and 52 seconds of ice time. They have a couple of other guys. Matthew Poitras, who is a kid, 19 years old, a second round pick, a nice development track for him. This is his first NHL season. He made the team out of camp. He's got 11 points in 24 games as a third line center. That's fine. Right. And then Trent Frederick plays a little bit down the middle as well. So the Bruins get their guys to overperform because of the system and, again, all that's happening around them. And sorry, I shouldn't have mentioned that Frederick's listed as a center, but he doesn't play center. John Beecher is the fourth line center for the Bruins. More of a defensive role, of course, for him. Only 5 points in 23 games, playing 10 minutes of ice time a night, but young player, more defensive than anything. So that's their center group: Zacha, Coyle, Poitras, and Beecher. But it's enough. It is enough because, again, Pastrnak, Marchand, Morgan Geekie, Jake DeBrusk, Van Riemsdyk, they've got veteran pieces that produce. Van Riemsdyk, by the way, having a big bounce back season, 16 points in 23 games for him, playing limited minutes, only 14 minutes of ice time a night. He does have some production on the power play, kind of a power play specialist for the Bruins. So that's their group up front, and it's working. The blue line, as I mentioned, real solid. The top four is one of the best in hockey. Charlie Coyle, Matt Grzelcyk, Hampus Lindholm, and Brandon Carlo, super solid. And then Kevin Shattenkirk now on the third pair. Mason Lohrey, not a player I know much about, on the third pair as well. 23 years old for Lohrey. He's played 10 games this year, 4 points. Goaltender, of course, they have the best goalie duo in hockey, which also helps. And Linus Ullmark, after winning the Vezina last season, is right back at it, having another tremendous season, a .918 save percentage, one of the top marks in the league. To be fair, though, Ullmark is actually becoming a little bit of the 1B. And it's not even really fair to him, right? Because, to call him a 1B. He's still one of the most productive goaltenders in the NHL. You want to tell me it's the system? Fine. Of course, the system is a part of it. But remember, I always liked Ullmark when he was a Sabre, and I thought he was an above-average starting goaltender. Is he only an elite starting goaltender because of Boston? You could make that argument. I think, though, this is legit, that what he's doing means he's one of the best goalies in hockey. This year, goals saved above expected. Out of 68 goalies that qualify that have played 5 or more games, Linus Ullmark ranks 16th. Same numbers as Igor Shesterkin and Connor Hellebuyck. As I mentioned, he's kind of ceded to Jeremy Swayman, though. Swayman, who we also like as a talent, he's 7th in the NHL in goals saved above expected. He has a .932. save percentage. They've played about even. Ullmark has played 12 games, Swayman 13. So Ullmark will start tonight against the Sabres and make it 13-13. So that is a stout goalie combination. That is a great blue line. Those are great wingers. They're not, to me, still good centermen on paper, but when everything else around it is working, you're going to get the most out of those centermen. So the Bruins on the season, 17-4-3. Now, they did have a hot start. They cooled off a little bit in the middle, and then in recent days, they've won 3 in a row. So that's kind of the story of their season. They were unreal to start. They kind of cooled off. They had played some bad teams at the start, which helped. Then they cooled off, and now they're starting to heat up a little bit again in the last week or so. So the Bruins are going to make the playoffs. They're going to be one of the top 3 teams in the Atlantic. They currently have a 5-point lead with a game in hand to win the Atlantic Division again. Someday it'll end. I promise you, someday it'll end. Marchand is 35. But to be fair, the Bruins are doing a little bit of a rebuild on the fly here, right? Like let's see what Poitras becomes. I want to make sure I'm pronouncing that right, by the way. I have it up at Hockey Reference. Poitras. Is that it? Because I was trying to read the phonetic pronunciation at Hockey Reference, and for some reason it wasn't loading for me. So either way, 19 years old, second-round pick, and doing what he's doing, he might be a future piece here to consider. But as I mentioned, like, they've got, some decent young pieces that are a little bit younger that are kind of, starting to work their way through the lineup. Pasternak is re-signed. He's 27. He's not going anywhere soon. McAvoy's still only 26. Like, I'm done counting out the Bruins. Again, until I convince myself otherwise in the offseason. So for now, they are still here in our hair. And this is how, as long as the Sabres have been in the playoff drought, the Bruins have been right there, dominating them at every turn. So what do we like betting-wise, though, for tonight's game? We'll get to my same-game parlay of the night, try to get back in the heat streak for my anytime goal pick, which will be included in the same-game parlay. So that's coming up on the Locked On Sabres podcast. We are presented by Indeed. Indeed is the hiring platform where you can attract, interview, and hire all in one place. Don't spend hours on multiple job sites looking for candidates with the right skills when you can do it all with Indeed. Find top talent fast with Indeed's suite of powerful hiring tools with Indeed Instant Match, assessments, and virtual interviews. If you hate waiting, Indeed's U.S. data shows over 80% of Indeed employers find quality candidates whose resume on Indeed matches their job description the moment they sponsor a job. Candidates you invite to apply through Instant Match are 3 times more likely to apply to your job than candidates who only see it in searches, according to U.S. Indeed data. Indeed knows when you're growing your own business, you have to make every dollar count. That's why with Indeed, you only pay for quality applications that match your must-have job requirements. Indeed knows hiring needs to be cost-effective. When you're running your own business, they know when you're doing everything for your company, you can't afford to overspend on hiring. Visit Indeed.com/locked-on to start hiring now. Just go to Indeed.com/locked-on, Indeed.com/locked-on. Terms and conditions apply. Cost per application pricing not available for everyone. Need to hire? You need Indeed. Back here on the Locked On Sabres podcast with Joe DiBiase. Want to remind everybody, one, check out our text line, Locked On Sabres. Join subtext.com/Locked On Sabres. And reminder that Locked On's launched the first ever national sports 24/7 streaming channel on YouTube. Locked On Sports Today, here for your 24/7, covering the top stories of sports of the day with the local experts of Locked On, plus our national shows covering every league. Go to Locked On Sports Today on YouTube. Subscribe to the first ever national sports 24/7 streaming channel. Time for our best bets for Sabres and Bruins and my same game parlay for tonight's game. And we will start by looking at what the over-under and what the Sabres odds are in this game. The Sabres are the biggest underdog in the league on Thursday night. No surprise, being at the Bruins. Plus 220 for you non-bettors. To bet the Sabres to win, you would bet 100. You would win 220 if you do. The Bruins are minus 275. You bet 275 to win 100 if you want Boston. The over-under in this game is 6.5, plus 102 for the over, minus 128 for the under. Again, this is as big an underdog as the Sabres have been all season. Bruins have won 3 in a row. Sabres have lost 4 in a row. Sabres never beat the Bruins. Again, only 2 of their last 20 against Boston. And it's on the road. Completely understandable why they would be an underdog in this game. So, let's do it. Our same game parlay of the night. I am someone that will not run after being wrong on a guy in the last bet. And sometimes that works out. Doesn't always, but sometimes it does. And I'm going to go back to the Dylan Cousins well. Dylan Cousins, I had to win or to score last game at plus 330. His odds have actually gone up, plus 400 now. So you would get more on your return because Cousins isn't scoring 4 goals on the season. But as I said last show, I do believe he's playing better. He's generating more chances. He's finally on a consistent line with Zach Benson and JJ Peterka. Those two can create for him as much as he has had to create for others in the past. So I think Cousins is going to get the monkey off his back. He's going to score in this game. He scored last year, and I mentioned that thriller on New Year's Eve. Or was it New Year's Day? Either way. He scored a tying goal in that game. Huge. He helped set up Tuck in overtime. He played well against Boston last year, and I'm predicting he's going to play well against Boston in this game. He is the one that seems the most PO'd with this season. And maybe part of that is he knows he is one of the key players letting them down. But Cousins calling them soft the other night, and now Boston, I think this dude shows up for this game. If you're going to call out your own team for being soft, you got to be the guy who shows up against Boston, who is the team that will bring that out of you if you're soft. So I think Cousins shows up in this game. I am going to go with the Bruins on the spread, though. Minus a goal and a half, the puck line. So I'm taking the Bruins to win this game by 2 or more goals. If you look at recent Sabres and Bruins results, the Sabres have been blown out by Boston in recent memory. In fact, listen to the scores of their last games. They lost to Boston 5-2 in their most recent performance, 7-0 before that, 7-1 before that. Those are the 3 games they've played since that New Year's game. So in those 3 games, the Sabres have been outscored 19-3 by the Boston Bruins. So to win by 2 or more, and remember, you can always get that cheap empty netter when you pick the puck line. I'm taking the Bruins to win by 2 or more at minus 110. And then finally, I am going to go with the over 6.5 goals in this one, plus 102. Again, I think the Bruins are going to find their way to scoring a lot of goals in this game. And it'll be up to the Sabres to keep up. I think Sabres come out flying in the first bit of this game, trying to score first because they're desperate to score first because it hasn't been happening. And that actually could go either way. I think someone's going to score early here because, one, the Sabres give up goals all the way early, and they know how important the first goal is. They're going to be efforting really hard to be the first team to score. Someone scores in the first 10 minutes, if you ask me, and that will lead us to an over in this game over the long term. So I'm going over 6.5 goals. The Bruins minus 1.5 on the puck line, and Dylan Cousins as an anytime goal scorer, plus 1642. That would be 10 to win 164. That would be 100 to win $1,600 for tonight's game. You can get all of those odds, and you could take our same game parlay if you want at FanDuel Sportsbook. All right, enjoy Sabres and Bruins as much as you can. It'll kind of be up, I guess, to the hockey team tonight. And hopefully, every time I say hopefully, we'll talk to you after Sabres win. They never win. But I'll say it anyway. Hopefully, we'll be talking to you next after a Buffalo Sabres victory. Sabres and Bruins, 7 o'clock. Enjoy the game. Thanks for listening again to the Locked On Sabres podcast. If you want to chime in, if you want to converse with me or other fans, our Sorties group chat, join subtext.com/LockedOnSabres. If you join in by tonight, they'll be sure to check, hit me up. Let me know that you just joined, and we'll try to have some fun. Or we'll be mad together. One of the two. Thanks for listening to Locked On Sabres podcast, making us your first listen every day. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.